Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I am joined today by a new friend of mine, Leah Ray, and I'm so honored to have her on my channel. I'll just tell everybody really quick. I first saw her on Journey to Truth several months ago. I don't even know. The time has been so weird lately, but I was taken back by her interview because she said so many things that I often say, and I had to meet her. So we have now been introduced through Tyler, and I'm really honored to have you on my channel today, Leah. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for just doing your work. It really makes a difference.
Oh, thank you. I love bringing, empowering women together because we've been split apart for so many generations that I think we're all finding each other. And I'm really enjoying this journey of meeting people like yourself. And there are so many out there. So I'm grateful for the connection between Journey to Truth that brought us together. So the work that you do, and I want you to tell everyone your story, but briefly, I'll just let everyone know that it seems like you specialize in Akashic records. You work with clients like I do in a different way, and you help them kind of navigate to their highest timeline and the highest frequency for their highest good, which I love all of the things that you say because I do very similar work in different ways, but probably a lot of similarities as well. And you've also been trained in QHHT, and I wonder how much of that you've done or still do. So Leah, tell everybody a little bit about your background and more about what you do, please.
Okay. Yeah, I don't even know how to begin because it's such an interesting journey, where I had to I felt it's like going down dark places, but then finding the light. And so basically, as a young child, I was super sensitive. I would see spirits and I would see auras around people and colors, and I'd associate people with colors and numbers. So like I just wouldn't remember like classmates' names, but I would know their color and I'd know their birthday and I would know everything but their name. But so it was I had to kind of always have different ways of like my own little encyclopedia of symbols so that I could remember, oh yeah, Julie is a yellow and she's a seven and like all these things. So then I would finally get to their actual name, but it would be super interesting growing up because obviously it was very different. And I was, just seen as more of a unique child and not always, I could merge with groups, but I was really more just, let me just hang out in nature and talk to my animal friends. So, but basically what happened with me is I ended up trying to figure out how to understand what I was seeing, why I was feeling so intensely. So I would, as a even teenager, I would take shaman courses. I spent a beautiful summer in Navajo Mountain, which they call themselves Dene, but there I could see a few days in advance. I could really understand just different things in a complete different way. And my intuition was just super heightened there. But then I ended up going to school at University of Miami, and I didn't realize how open I was, and I had to figure out how to close it, like close all this what I was experiencing because it was very odd, and I would try not to speak about it because I was very shy. But for a few of my friends, I could say, "Oh yeah, I dreamt your dream last night," or like weird stuff, like, and
Right.
so yeah, so it was hard to date and because I would dream my boyfriend's dreams and I could tell if they were not being loyal, like I would see it. And then they thought I was a stalker and I'm like, no, I just dreamt it. So I basically thankfully found I was always into like trying to heal myself. So I was always trying to find teachers and shamans and healers.
Mhm.
And I ended up thankfully in the healing arts world of massage therapy by accident when I was 19. And so I just said, oh, this is great because I could speak this language of energy work. And I see this aura and I see this color, I see this gray around this area. So then I thankfully took a lot of courses on how to work in with the energy world. But then it wasn't always working for me because I'd get just weird energies, like especially with both men and women in the massage world. And it was Miami, so people were there for vacation thinking that it was not sacred. And so I saw it as a sacred space that I would create. I was so into trying to help heal and try to create a space for them to heal that. And then when they would disrespect it, I would be heartbroken because I was just so sensitive. So
Yeah.
long story short, I ended up working in the nightclub world because I had to pay for my college and school and stuff. So that was a quick way of making money in one night. That back then, thankfully, we wore like full clothes. Like I was always freezing, so I'd wear like, jeans and a t-shirt and a sweatshirt or something. But nowadays, it's a complete different experience. Like they're pretty much wearing bikinis to work, with fishnets. So
Mhm.
thankfully that wasn't, I mean, some girls did show up like that, but that wasn't me. So, but from that experience, because I worked in a really high-end spa and I met a lot of celebrities or worked on them, and then I would go into the nightclub world and see like either the same ones or similar. So I had that intimate in terms of like 2 inches, or sometimes I'd have to touch them interaction, where I guess not everyone had like those types of experiences where I actually had to touch them. And when I would touch people, I ended up starting to see parts of their lives. I didn't want to see that or know these things, but because I didn't know how to stop it, I ended up finding this class, Healing Touch, or Healing Touch Beyond Borders. But that was, I called it like Reiki on steroids, but it just allowed other modalities of energy work to kind of be combined. So, but thankfully, the way I always learned was I needed hands-on. I didn't like to read books and
Mhm.
get the book experience. I wanted the hands-on, and then I would go to the book to see if there was a reference. So it was really fun for me because I worked in a high-end spa where I could practice what I was learning. But then it was also scary at times because I'd see stuff that I didn't want to see, or so I was always trying to navigate. And then thankfully too, I found out about Akashic Records. I read about Edgar Casey when I was a kid, and I prayed that please let me have these gifts. I want to help people. Like I guess my whole journey was to help people, but ironically, it was to help me figure out me too.
Mhm.
As we learn and grow, it's like, oh, I can help you if you want, or share information so you can maybe heal from that. So, but ironically, I found Akashic Records, so it allowed me like an on-off switch, which saved me in so many ways. I mean, it's still when I'm tired, things just show up that I'm like, oh gosh, I need to shut it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I kind of got caught up in that nightclub world. I kind of went from one world to the other with the spa versus the nightclub, or both at the same time. And that probably was about a good 12 years, 13 years. So I just got burned out, like in a way, because ended up staying in the spa world after about 10 years of the nightclub world. But that was very hard for me because I'd feel everyone's emotions and feel their pain or see stuff that I didn't want to see. So, but it was a great, let's say, it was a school, a very strong, it was a really amazing school. It just wasn't always fun.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, a lot of what you said resonates with me. I didn't work in the nightclubs, but I mean, in my early 20s for a long time, for a good not close to a decade, I mean, we would go to nightclubs and we would party and we would drink. And as an extreme empath myself who didn't understand what that was or what that meant because I was never taught and I didn't see anybody else around me having those experiences, I was so extremely sensitive to energies, and people would give me weird vibes when I would meet them, and I would be intimidated by them. Sometimes I would freeze, especially with certain men, and I didn't understand what it was until much later. And so it's really difficult to navigate the empath world,
Yeah.
especially in our younger years. But I think a lot of us sign up for to be around and be immersed in that energy so that we can evolve and understand it and then teach others later, because a lot of us are doing that type of work as adults. And so it was kind of important. But one thing you mentioned that I think is interesting, you mentioned names. And I just want to talk about names for a second, because a lot of star seeds have issues with names, that I have met and I've noticed over the years, including myself. I never remember anyone's name. I will always remember the energy and the way the person makes me feel or made me feel. and their work, I don't see colors quite as much, but I feel the energy, and I have a sense of like connection or non-connection. And but I can never remember names, even when I was a young girl. And I met a lot of people like me throughout my life that were the same. And I came to this weird conclusion that I think that for us, like we're deeply spiritual beings. We don't put the labels, like we don't resonate with the labels. Because a lot of my guides that I've talked to or angels, like they don't use names. They'll give themselves names or assign themselves names for the luxury for us to be able to communicate and connect in some way. But they don't always have names because names are kind of a paradigm of a lower density of us being able to like label ourselves in some way. So it was funny that you said that about the names.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because like I didn't know. I think I was watching. I don't really watch a lot of TV, but anymore. But when I did, I watched something. I think it was in Weeds, that show that they used to have. And one from the characters said, "Oh, I have a synesthesia." And so I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting name." So when I researched, because he's like, I can see patterns and numbers and colors. He was an accountant or something. And so when I was like, I looked up synesthesia and I was like, oh my God, there's a name for this. Like I had no idea because like I had every color, every number with a color, letter with a color, but I also had a feeling. I could
Mhm.
smell. It was really weird. I could
Yeah.
smell the color. So anyway, apparently, oh, there's a name for it. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so we're not the only ones.
Interesting. I love that show, by the way, but I don't remember that part, but it's been many years since I've seen it. Well, speaking of the movie industry and just the music industry and all of that, going back to what you were talking about in the club world and the massage world, one of the first things I wanted to talk about, because I think it's extremely important, and I've written about it and I'm continuing to write about it in my book coming out soon, and I'll be speaking about it at a conference coming up. It's so important, is selling your soul. And this notion right now that's circulating throughout the collective of like almost in a glamorized way. And most people that are awake enough know that selling your soul has been a aspect of the 3D in order to be a part of the elite structure. Now, how I understand it, you can't actually sell your soul, but there's a lot of illusions and trickery where you agree to something to some degree, and then you are essentially owned in this life. But on a soul level, I don't personally believe anyone's soul can be purchased or owned. But the notion of it is being broadcast throughout our youth right now, and it's almost glamorized. So now it's moved from the music industry and the elite and the celebrities to everyday people are hearing it like this term. Celebrities are saying it all the time, and artists are saying it all the time. And now I hear young girls and teens and all of them talking about it. And I fear that they are misinterpreting it, the value of what it is that they're giving away by thinking it's cool. And you talked about selling your soul in the interview with Tyler about your experience with certain people where you could just tell before it was selling your soul was a title. You back then you were able to recognize that someone had done such to some degree of that. And with one in particular celebrity, which we don't say names on my channel for a lot of reasons, but we can allude to and maybe give initials. But can you talk about that experience or those experiences?
Yeah, because I was always just curious in terms of like, I think I minored in marine. I studied marine science, but I minored in anthropology, cultural anthropology, because I was always just curious about different cultures. And but Florida is such a mix of all different cultures, all different religions, and so I could see, I could end up seeing if someone was like giving homage to a saint or a spirit, because it would be in their aura, or I could see a symbol around them, oddly enough,
Mhm.
like when I would just pass them, or that fear, you know how you mentioned that fear, or just that almost like getting frozen energy, that to me I would literally feel like I was being hunted, like just even in
Mhm.
passing them, or even just
Yeah,
looking them in the
yeah.
eye. I would be like, oh, this person could totally murder me. And I would be like, why did I think that? Like, what's going on? But with that specific person that is in the headlines now, ironically, who he dated, I massaged her in the spa world. The whatever we can say a J, but then I bumped. it was just interesting. It looked like she was just starting her career. And then when I served them in the nightclub world, um, I had this horrible, horrible, horrible feeling of like going into like where all my energy just dropped, and I had the worst bellyache, the worst stomach ache, and it went down into like, oh my God, I think I could throw up, or like it was just the weirdest, almost like I got hit by a wall, and then all of a sudden all the energy dropped, and then I just wanted to throw up, and then I couldn't move forward. It's really weird. But when
Mhm.
I had to go and serve these people, oh gosh, it was just it was like being in I don't know, just the worst energy I could possibly be in. So it's almost like I couldn't even breathe heavily. But I had that experience before when I was a teenager, on the vineyard, when I met that president's wife. Uh, and so I had that same reaction to her. So I realized, oh, this is the energy, because I was young, so I didn't know fully about all this energy work and how I didn't even know I was an empath. I didn't even know that term at the time. I had no clue. I just thought it
Yeah.
was strange or odd. Um, but when I approached, and it was literally maybe a 10-foot feeling in the nightclub world, because everyone's kind of so on top of each other, like the tables are all really close to each other. But I felt this wall about 10 feet away from him and her. And I was like, oh gosh, this is horrible. So ironically, he stiffed us. He wouldn't pay his bill, and we didn't make any money that night. And it was like a huge weekend, like Memorial Day or something, when we should
Mhm.
have made a good amount of money, like enough to, I could pay my rent for like 3 months, something like that. So anyway, it was just energetically too, he was not a good person, and not a good person at all. Like, and his eyes were weird. But he always wore sunglasses so you couldn't see. But anyway, I just wanted to throw up that whole night. So my friend, who was also in the entertainment industry, he owned his own uh clothing line, and so, and he knew he was out on the club every night too, because he bought a place in Miami, and he was from New York. So, and he was super down to earth. And he'd come in almost every other night. So I would be like, hey, what's up with this guy? Like, I don't understand. Because he knew, not just because he had his own clothing line, he also was trying to go into the music industry. And so he knew everyone in the music industry. And I was like, oh, I just had this horrible feeling around this. I could speak openly to him. And he's like, oh, that person definitely sold his soul. And I'm like, how do you know? And he said, well, because I was trying to help him with his clothing line. And I hung out with him for a few days. And he's like, I didn't sleep 1 hour. And meanwhile, this guy went nonstop, had all the energy. He slept on his the plane of the jet for like 2 hours. And he's like, and then he went and did this huge event. And he said, there's that, it's not human. Like, he's like, I know, he's like, in this industry, you have to sell your soul in order to get that much publicity, that much backing. You have to have like to be in every magazine, or have your own music videos and be in that element. You have to sell your soul to get that big. And my friend at the time, wasn't, he knew about that, and he's like, I'm like, would you ever do that? He's like, no, are you crazy? And ironically, now he's as big as there. So I haven't spoken to him in a few years, and I'm like, oh, I just, I think people just get to a point where maybe it just overtakes them, or maybe when that whole issue with being forced to get something injected, that caused a lot of people to, like you said, not be in the driver's seat. And I literally, that's how I saw it with a lot of my clients. So I think once that happens, and once that energy shift happens, then maybe the energy that is now driving them is the one, making all the decisions. And yeah, let's.
Okay, everybody, I'm sorry about the interruption, but some negative energy, 3D interference, this occurred while Leah was talking in the beginning about a certain person. And my TV literally turned on in the background and startled me, because I thought it was my children in the background in the hallway, because they were kids' voices. And it was a very demonic sounding child's voice. And I knew that was not my kids. And it was the TV that turned on to a specific scene in a movie where this kid was speaking in a demonic voice. So it definitely scared me a little bit. And so I've since turned the TV off, and now we're back. And so we are protecting ourselves, and but we are not gonna be in fear. So I'm going to continue the conversation, and I want to unpack, Leah, what you said. But first, I think people have an idea of who we're talking about, and I don't want people to get annoyed, because I think sometimes people do, because I don't ever talk negatively about anyone on my channel, and I try not to bring up names unless I'm speaking positively, because I just don't like the energy. And when you say someone's name that has a negative vibe, you bring that person's energy towards you, and you give power to it. So that's another reason. So I don't want people to think we're just messing around and joking about this, and making it a game where you have to figure out who we're talking about. That's not our intention. It's not my intention. So we are speaking about somebody with the initials of PD, at least the stage name. And his girlfriend was JL, and the president's wife is very famous, and HC are her initials. So I think we can leave it at that. But a similar experience happened to me, Leah, and it's so interesting. And I've never shared this with anybody publicly. I mean, people know about it in my private life. But when I was in my nightclub days, many years ago. I think this was before my son was even born, my first son. So this was 18 years ago. I was probably 20. And I was in DC, and that person, PD, was in a nightclub that night. I didn't know that he was going to be there. I didn't go there for him, but I happened to be in the same club that he was at. And the way that the club was set up, it was like an open concept, a central bar, and then kind of a VIP section off to the side. I actually can't even remember where this was, but I can see it very clearly. And he was off to the side, almost like sometimes these clubs have columns in them, and he was sitting on a platform next to a column. I feel like it was a column with a divider and another column, and he was sitting on it. So he was higher up than everybody. It wasn't a stage though. And I remember kind of being more curious back then about, I really wasn't a big fan, but I was, a celebrity. I was curious about it. So I wanted to get close. And I remember being about probably 20 feet from him. That's as close as I could get, because there were so many girls screaming at him, trying to touch him and be near him. And I didn't really care. But at one point, Leah, I happened to get close enough, and all of a sudden, like the room parted a little bit in the weirdest kind of dreamy way, where like somehow there was a pathway where I had a clear vision of him, and he had a clear vision of me, and we locked eyes at one point, for a very brief second. But I'm telling you, time stood still for me in that moment, and it was one of the scariest moments I can recall in my life, where I felt the most enormous amount of fear. And I don't even know the word. I'm getting goosebumps right now, but I don't actually remember. I don't think there are words to describe how I felt afraid. I felt uneasy. My heart started to race, and I felt, oh, evil is the word. I felt pure evil. And I was like, oh my God, I'm looking around at all of these girls just idolizing him, and like girls taking off their shirts, and I'm just looking around, and I'm like, am I the only one that sees this? And clearly I was in the moment. Maybe there were others, I don't know. But I turned around and I left the club, and I never saw that person again. But it really affected me, like to my core. And it made me think about all the other times I had felt similarly to that in clubs near other men or even women, not to that degree. And it really made me think about what was going on there. Even at 20, like I didn't think about selling your soul, but it made me think or wonder, like, what was that about? Now I know.
Right. And like I had that same experience, and but like it's weird because my body, for some reason, I either want to vomit or run to the bathroom, because my body just like, it's almost
Yeah.
like I can't handle it.
Rejecting it. Yeah.
But it's happened to me randomly in Miami, like in literally a grocery line, where that same feeling would wash up behind me, and I would be like, oh my God, you have to run, there's a murderer behind you, something. And I would be like, oh, I can't even stand here and like pay for my groceries. And I was like, don't look back. But then I would be like, let me just confirm this, because so I don't think I'm going crazy. And I would look back, and it would be like this zombified person that looked definitely like probably murdered 20 people. And it would be like this horrific, like fear, or like you said, evil. And so like I've come across that where it's very few and far between, thankfully, but it's you'll know it when
You
you
know it.
experience it.
Yeah, you'll know it. Well, I don't want the conversation to be low vibrational, but I want to bring attention to parents out there, or aunts and uncles, or just friends of the youth, and even adults. This is a serious issue right now, that I believe that they are glamorizing the idea of selling your soul, and they're marketing the young ones through music and makeup and money. And this is something that we need to pay attention to. And I believe it's our job as the adults who are aware and open to it, to warn people about it, because this is not a joke. And my daughter and I talk about it. I said, this is not a joke. When I tell I mean, she's the one I really have to talk to. The boys don't really care about that stuff. And I say, listen, Aramis, you got it. This is a serious thing. You do not sell your soul. It's not a joke. And once you do something like that, and you put your energy and you connect your energy to the dark like that, it's very hard to walk away, because you have to know how to do it. And if you don't, it can follow you your whole life. I said this, and I'm not trying to scare you, but I take it very serious in my house. I said, you have to be in control. And I want people to know that this is an issue. This is an agenda. And we need to be diligent and aware of it. What do you think, Leah?
Oh my gosh, I get so sad because there's a part of me that wants, because I'm where I'm living, unfortunately, there's it's just a different let's say world from Florida. So like I literally was like, I need to go picket and I need to go put signs out in, like, because they're just right in Boston, they're doing horrific things to children and mutilating them. And so there's a part of me that's like, oh, I have to, you
Yeah,
know, wake people up. But then there's another part that's like, no, let me just keep doing my work. Let me do my daily day-to-day work. And but it happens to, like, I have friends, I have kids, and um one of them has a daughter that is infatuated with a celebrity that puts up the devil signs, and I get passionate to the point of I get very not territorial, but just like this mama bear, and this is not my child. And but I get to the point of, do you not understand? Like, and then, but I'm the one that also calls out because they watch TV and they'll watch like the Super Bowl events and these other events. And so I learned to just observe and try not to speak so much, because people get annoyed when if you're not in the right group where they are
right.
seeing this. But I kind of just dropped, I just asked, did you see all those flames? Did you see all the, this symbolism here? So thankfully some of them are very aware, but I just get sad. One of the, especially the girl, like she puts devil signs up, and because she's following this
Yeah,
singer, and I'm horrified because the parents don't see it. And I'm trying to delicately, like I get to the point where I get passionate and then I'll start crying because
me
that's just,
too.
yeah, because that's who I am. And because they're like, I don't understand. This isn't even your child. Why are you getting so upset? And I'm like, because you don't understand where that could lead.
Mhm.
And maybe because I've seen it or I've been in it, like I've had to clear symbols off of people's auras that were placed on them from these
Yeah.
handlers or these dark entities or these dark beings. And they don't know they're under a spell. They have no clue. And that's why I get sad. I had to clear them off me. Like, I mean, I've had to have my friends help me clear my stuff too. Like where I guess, we're all here to help people as we wake up, that we'll help them wake up. But then I'm like, well, maybe they need to go down that set. They need to
True.
go down that journey.
You're so true about that, Leah. And I want to share something really quickly. Um, I, I am very adverse to the music today. Not to sound like a cranky old lady, because like back then they used to say, everybody says that about the generation before, and then you're like, oh, you're so old. But no, like the quality of music has significantly gone down. The vibration has changed. It's very disconcerting. I talk about it a lot. The subliminal messaging, the blatant messaging, the verses, the tone, I mean, everything about it is clear to me, that there's an agenda behind it. So I don't let my children listen to that. And the symbolism is a
Yeah.
big one. I mean, they don't even realize when they're putting their hands up and doing certain things. I feel bad because I don't think a lot of them know what it like what it really means. They see other people doing it, and celebrities, they do it too. And that's how you can inadvertently, sell an aspect or a fractal of yourself to the dark side, because they hook you in that way, or and they get it, your field becomes imprinted. But I tried to be a cool mom recently, and my daughter started to hang out with a new crowd at a homeschool pod that she was in. And I was like, she wanted to fit in so bad. She was really lacking friends because we had moved to Florida a couple years ago, and she had a really hard time the first year here and didn't make any friends. So I let her listen. I was more lenient about the music, and I listened to it too because I wanted her to experience it with me, and I wanted to be a part of it. Her friends would come over, we would listen. We would have dance parties, we would have all sorts of music, but that disgusting music, I would let them play because at least they were in my home and I could watch them. But I will tell you, Leah, my daughter changed as a human being in a short period of 2 to 3 months from this music. And I saw it in front of my eyes, and she was taken over and like hypnotized. And I couldn't even believe that of all people, like what I do. I'm like, Sherri, what you do and what you preach, how can you let this happen in your own home? And I felt shame that I'm still working through, but I've come through that because I realized that I think it was a lesson for both. I needed
Yes.
to allow her to experience that, because now in hindsight, she looks back and she recognizes how she changed and how bad it is. And now she tells me when she sees artists and symbols, oh, look, mom, they're doing it. And now she's talking about it. Now she's advocating for it. She'll still listen to it here and there, but she knows better and she learns something from it. So if I look at it in that way, it was all part of a divine plan. But oh my God, I was really kicking myself for a while. Like, you're a terrible mom. How could you do that when you know better? So you just don't know. I mean, we're all susceptible and vulnerable to some degree.
Well, even because in Miami, it was different culture compared to Massachusetts where I grew up. And the music was kind of all the same, but I could sense too when it started shifting, just because late 90s, early 2000, I could, and this is the weirdest thing, because I started to research because I was like, why do I could feel this weird energy around some music, and then I could feel this celestial loving energy around others. And then I was like, oh, because they're putting like hexes on or demonic spells on the entire album to make it sell more, or they're
Yeah.
doing all these. And then I started to hear it, and like the DJs back then, thankfully, were able to play their own music. Like it wasn't only top, whatever's on the radio, the top, whoever's paying the most for it to have.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, so like I thankfully wasn't around DJs they had their own playlist. They weren't controlled by the gigantic corporate world yet. But I could hear it right away when one would be cursed versus one would be blessed. And I was like, I would get goosebumps. I would want to crawl out of my skin. But then I could see where like the temptation of like this weird, very strange, like almost high energy of like, oh, like it was a temptation energy that I was like, this, and it was all through the music. And I was like, gosh, these poor children, they have no idea. I mean, adults too, like most people you don't know unless you're very sensitive.
Yeah. And I think people are starting to be more aware of it, and you're seeing a lot more people talk about it. And that brings me to the next thing that you said that I wanted to talk about is you described to Tyler and Aaron in that one interview exactly in the same way that I see it and I've described it. And I'm like, oh, this girl, we're simpatico. Like I love what she's saying. I felt very connected to and drawn to what you were saying because it resonated so deeply with me. And that is when you were looking at your clients who either had, this thing or just were around negative energy or did horrible things because of their lifestyle. You noticed that it was almost like they were either behind their body, or in the analogy of a car, there's another entity that took over and was kind of operating the ship. Can you talk more about that? Because I've been saying that too, and people need to realize like this does occur.
Well, yeah, and like I think I was able to share it with like one other friend that she took energy work classes with me because we would take like 5 years of energy class. And so we got to practice on each other and learn. But she was also in the massage therapy world. So she's sensitive. So she was the only one I could really talk to because my partner at the time was not fully awake, and he was struggling with his stuff, and he thought I was like crazy. And so I was like, I would definitely stay mute with him, but I had regular clients that I had known for 5 to 7, 8, maybe 10 years, some of them, where I would go to their house once a week, do energy work, and then massage them, or massage them and do energy work during the treatment. And the saddest part was I had to mourn this experience because I thought they were very, let's say, intelligent, like in a way where they were very affluent. They had the best, supposedly, education, and they were supposedly super healthy. Like they were into keeping their bodies clean. They would have infrared saunas. They would do these huge week retreats somewhere at this holistic spa. So in my world, I thought, oh, I could speak freely to some of them because we would talk about that, what was being forced on everyone. And they were worldly, so they wanted to travel. So they used that as an excuse of like, well, I want to travel. And I'm like, but did you read the ingredients? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, because they're not giving you the ingredients. Like, so then I was like, didn't you read 1984, like when you're a kid? And
Right.
so I would try to ask because I thought they went to private school. Like they had a different education than public school. Not that it was a big difference, but I did both schools, and it was a big difference because I learned a lot in a private school where I wasn't indoctrinated so much in the public school energy of it has to be this way. Although I can't remember which teacher did have us read 1984, but whenever I did read that, it helped change. It was just a validation of stuff that I had already seen as a kid. And so long story short, I would go into these people's homes and start to work on them. And then all of a sudden I would get prickly needles, like almost being jabbed up and down my spine, up and down my back. It would be hot. And I was like, whoa. And so those are usually experiences I have when I'm being attacked by an entity
Mhm.
that I'm trying to clear off of somebody, whether that's over the phone and the person's long distance or someone in front of me. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll do my normal things of clearing. No big deal.
Yeah.
I never was afraid. Then all of a sudden, this thing wasn't leaving. And so then I tapped in deeper and I was like, whoa, this person's soul is now in the back seat or even outside of I saw it as a car, outside of the car, not
Mhm.
even inside the car or in the back seat. And this thing that's now in the driving seat has taken over, and it was an entity, and it was not a kind one.
Yeah.
Um, with other people's energies, I did see who had even just stem cell therapy, whatever was in that stem cell therapy, which I saw 3 babies and 2 mothers at one point. Um, and now was part of his energy. And I asked a girlfriend of mine who also does energy work. I'm like, well, how can I couldn't clear it. And I literally went every time I went, which was once a week, 4 weeks, I couldn't clear it. But he was told by his guides to honor the energy and give it thanks for allowing it to be part of his body now and to help
Mhm.
him heal. And he didn't do the work. So then that was his karma. And I realized, oh, okay, I can step away. Like I don't need to worry about if how to clear because I just thought I wasn't doing a good job. Like I wasn't doing what I could normally do. And it wasn't. It was now their job. It was on them. They chose that, and now they have to figure out how to work with that or get rid of it. Because I did see some people could get rid of it, but it would took a lot of spiritual practice to get that in that to allow those the driver's seat and entity to leave. But it really, unfortunately, I that's what made me stop touching. It made me change my career, which
Yeah.
was yeah.
Well, it's probably, you were probably ready for the next thing. And like you had your human side had experienced enough of your lessons. So then
Yeah.
you can move on to, I mean, I feel like so much of our life is divinely planned that I remember you talking about that. And it was very profound for me. And again, another reason why I was like, she's the real deal when I was listening to you, because sometimes I listen to people and I'm just like, I'm not buying it. People seem, you could tell people are coming from a place of, I want people to like me or popularity, and they say things that they heard other people say. And I remember when you were talking about that day and the stem cells, and I remember you saying I couldn't clear it, and I was thinking to myself, because and if I was the healer in that situation, and I said to myself, oh, he needs to honor those souls and thank them for what they've done, for how they've helped him. And then sure enough, like a minute, 30 seconds later, you said his guide said that. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what music just started. I don't know what it is with this interview, but like the first it was the TV, and then like Google
No,
over there
it's
just
so
turned on
crazy.
the music.
I was trying to clear before we started because I was like, oh gosh, I hope things don't get wonky.
I clear extensively. So what it's probably because we're saying things that are important.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just gonna go with it. Can you hear that?
you don't hear it.
Okay,
So
so I'm gonna keep going with it. I'm not gonna let them stop us. We're
yes,
way too powerful. So there's a lot of negative paradigms in, Planned Parent,
yes,
I guess that place, whatever, Planned Parenthood, and a lot of us know or know of the
yeah.
atrocities that stem from that. And so in a situation like that, when someone's getting, it's all about it's a money grab, but also a ritual at the same time. So they take those tissue samples in a very awful ritualistic way, and then it funnels to the elite doctors for the elite people to spend buckets of money on it to receive that treatment that others couldn't afford, but they don't realize the price they're paying for what they're receiving. And so in this case, all he needed to do was recognize, oh man, maybe I made a mistake, and I want to thank these souls for allowing me to receive these stem cells to help myself. And it happens a lot, and people don't realize that sometimes it could be that simple. Like, give gratitude.
Oh yeah. And then just say, I thank you. And if you need to go where you else or like I always like to send them to the light to go where they're needed next or go reincarnate well or like if you like give honor and then allow them to go where they don't want to. I would think I could be wrong, but they don't want to be stuck with this guy.
No,
Like it's
they
not
don't.
no. No.
They don't.
So I'm like, please, because like that's what I think also made me sad is, oh gosh, these things, these poor souls were, not honored through that ritual or practice. And they're not allowed, well, they're now with this person, but they couldn't go to the next step to
Yeah,
then choose another way. But maybe there's a way that I just never I didn't go back anymore to him because
yeah.
it was not because he ended up I just said that's when it allowed me freedom in a way where this was the first time in my life because I used to be a people pleaser to the point of it would be I would get myself sick or go completely exhausted or not honor me. And so it actually gave me permission to say, I don't want to be a slave anymore. Like I literally was a slave to a company for years because I could practice my energy work and I wasn't getting disrespected like other places.
Mhm.
And I mean, yeah, it would happen randomly sometimes, but not as much.
Yeah,
And but that it gave me a freedom of saying, I'm not doing this, whether or not I don't eat, I don't care. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's what allowed me to help take care of my dad before he passed, because it allowed me to say, I'm going to go help my parent that
yeah,
needs me. So it's a
yeah.
blessing because I usually, and this is, I don't know if this happens to you as an empath. I get so like into like, oh, let me try to help or I
Hmm.
would shoot for them, like in a way where it would be 11 o'clock at night. Can you come tomorrow morning at 7? Because I have to catch a flight and this is the only time and I'm having such a hard time. And so I would jump in a weird way, like just to help. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, no, I'm not honoring me.
Yeah, because we don't have empaths, we need to learn boundaries. And I was like that too. It's like we want so much to help everyone else at our own detriment. And even in an intimate relationship, like with me being a mother,
Yeah,
admittedly my children come first. They always have.
yeah,
And that hasn't changed with each one. And to this day, like I will literally put myself last almost 100% of the time for them. And I even tell them, are you happy? And they say in that situation, and they say, yes, mommy. And I say, okay, that's all I could, that's all I need. That's all that fulfills me so much to know you're good, Now I'm good. And then when I'm now I feel like you're taken care of, I'll take care of myself. Now, I'm not saying that's right. And I've learned over the years to create boundaries even with them where I'm like, you know what? I need that mommy needs, I need to go do something for myself. And you know, when I started to prioritize that, I noticed because they're so smart, they see it and then they're like, Mom, are you taking time for yourself now? And they make sure that, so sometimes it's just putting the energy out there and prioritizing our wellness because we can't take everybody's burden. Although we try to, and we care so deeply and genuinely about others that I've been hurt so many times because I've extended the olive branch out to people who have hurt me in the past. And I'm
Oh yeah.
like, oh, but I want to help them. Like maybe they've changed. They didn't change. And they hurt me again and again. And I felt like dragged me through the mud with the wounds still fresh,
Yeah.
the old ones. And my husband was the one that actually pulled me out and went a couple of times and like shook me, not literally, but he's like, Sherri, that's enough. Like,
Yeah.
stop this. You know, thank God for him because I was just like, I want to help. You know, now I don't do that anymore.
Oh, thank God. Well, I'm learning that too. And it's with a parent. So it's like it's very interesting because I was like and like yeah, my boyfriend now is like there's only so much you can you're not gonna you're getting the same results every time you go. Because I'm like, well, I need to try one more time. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is when I need to learn send love from a distance. I can try to help from a distance. But like it's interesting because I think too, people know, they'll know because if you're kind and gentle and loving and you want the best for someone, they may not have that intention or they don't know how to interpret that. They don't know that language.
Mhm.
And
Well,
they
and
leave.
not everybody wants it. Not everybody wants to heal. And that's the hardest lesson for a healer is
Yeah.
what do you mean you don't want to heal? What do you mean you don't want something better? And I had to learn that too. You know, not everybody wants that. Sometimes people are real comfortable in their like pity party that they've created for themselves, and that's what they want. And that's their free will.
Yes, and they like to some of them like the misery or the anger, and they thrive off of it. They feed off of that. So they're getting and fulfilled in that space. And that's when I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I that world hurts me like physically. I can't be
Yeah.
around it. Otherwise, it washes over me. It's very strange. So you're right. It's some people just
Yeah.
that's their world and they prefer that.
They prefer it. I mean, I think our bodies, it's also a physiological craving, you know,
Yeah.
like an addict, because our bodies get so used to the adrenaline, the cortisol, the fight or flight survival mode that when we have the opportunity to step into something else, the person almost doesn't know how to relax it. The body doesn't know what to do with itself. It's like, I don't know how to be in parasympathetic mode. I only know sympathetic mode. And so it's almost like drama will be created to satisfy the craving of the body to be back in what it's familiar with. And it's a harsh reality to explain all those layers to people. But I think we're moving into that arena of understanding with the collective, and entity attachments are a big part of that, like you said. So we want people to be mindful and discern, am I in control? Or perhaps is something else controlling me? And I think even just that is the first step.
Oh yeah. Well, and even too, like I have my team where I have to call and be like, hey, I just traveled and please, like I'm at zero or negative. I can't see. Can you see for me? So like I'll have my team where I have to do call my people to have a
Yeah.
session or to have a tune up because they'll sometimes be able to just clear it faster or whatever. Because like I have to
Yeah.
if I'm not doing my own spiritual hygiene every day and doing my homework, I can get thrown apart, and like, oh gosh, please help.
We all need help sometimes. I mean, I have my one person that I trust and I need her I call her, I'm like, please help. You know, we all need help sometimes. We can't do it all. And so I resonate with that. And that brings me into what I'd like to talk to you about next, which I think is another big lesson for me. And then maybe we'll close it up with that today, that I heard you talk about with Tyler. Again, I hadn't heard anybody else talk about this, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. So I would love for you to explain or share the experience you had with a friend of yours that I think you were doing a session with, and her guides told her that something was going to occur so that it would shift the trajectory of what she was doing, when in reality it didn't happen. And I want to talk about why our guides can seemingly misguide us, but they don't. And sometimes messages are really intended for us, not the collective. And there's a fit that people get confused with that. And there's a gray area there. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's happened a few times, and so it made me really think. Like, I'm like, because I don't remember sessions or most of the session. I can remember little bits and pieces, but for the most part, like it comes through me, and like I get to see stuff, and then once I close, I won't really recall stuff. But there's a few that happened in 1 month time where I was like, this is strange. And there was two women, they were best friends at one point. They worked together, and then all of a sudden they had a falling out. And so I worked with both of them multiple times, and before the falling out and then after the falling out. And so the weirdest part was because I was like, am I being a hypocrite? Like, is this me? And I'm like, no, this isn't me. It's coming through me. I'm not saying this. The person's guides specifically are telling me certain things or giving me visions specifically what to say to that person. Like, because they'll ask questions throughout their session, and I'll just say, well, they're showing me this, and that. Well, this person, let's say B, was talking about A, and her guides were saying stuff about A that I worked with A, and A is like when I work with her, she's all love and light. It's all high vibrational. It's all beautiful. She didn't have like this, let's say, vengeance or jealousy energy. It was just pure love. She wanted the best for her friends. But when B was asking, her guides were saying, well, you need to stay away, and you need to do this, and it was saying stuff about A that I was questioning, because I was like, that doesn't make sense. They were best friends. Like, they had so much love and support. And it was basically telling this woman not to, she's no longer is going to need her or be a part of her life. She needs to, switch roads and go down a different path. And then A had the same message too, where it was like, B is jealous of you and is envious, so therefore you have to protect yourself and change your course and work for someone else. And it was the weirdest thing, because when I opened up both of them, they both had beautiful love and light all around them, and it was all high vibrational. But their guide said stuff about each other that I was really shocked about.
Yeah.
But what it did was it allowed them to go, and this A had a brand new job, which allowed her a brand new house, which allowed her a horse and a happy farm for her kids. And B had fixed her marriage and ended up healing something about her business. So it actually both was in their benefit, but it was weird because they were saying stuff that I started to question what's going on here. Like, it didn't
Yeah.
make sense to me
Hmm.
until I
Yeah.
figured, like, oh, maybe they needed to hear that so that they could continue on their journey in the way they were meant to go.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly that that happens. I've seen it. I've experienced it with my clients. I've seen it with my friends that have gone to other psychics that I know and respect, and they've received what they interpreted as misinformation, but that misinformation put them on a new path or a different trajectory that had they not made that choice, then that wouldn't have happened. It's sometimes I feel like our guides are not messing with us. They're not trying to trick us. And sometimes it's not even our guides. It could be just our higher self coming through, are going to push us in a direction is seemingly, not of our highest good, or it doesn't make sense in the moment, but it's for a reason. And the reason I think that is, Leah, and I'd love for your interpretation. I think because of our limitations, just simply being human, not at a soul level, because I think the potential of our soul to grasp information is like limitless. But in our human capacity, our brains, they're limited in their ability to take on a lot of information. So we can't possibly understand all the parts. So our guides are only going to tell us what we can handle or what we need to know at one time. Imagine if they told you the entire kit and caboodle, every single nook and cranny, and you would see like the downfalls and like this, and your head would spiral out of control, because then you're trying to process it all and make sense of it, and then you resist, and all of these things can happen. So sometimes I feel like they only tell us certain things to push us in the direction that we need to go, that's in our highest interest, that doesn't make sense in the beginning. And sometimes that could mean, oh, the collective, like in your other example, where there is an imminent potential war or some tragedy that caused your other friend to take a trip earlier than she would have normally. So for her life trajectory, and that event didn't actually happen, but it pushed her to where she needed to go. And that works if it's on a level where she's just sharing it with people she knows. But imagine those psychics out there that share every tidbit of information that they receive with the collective, and they don't realize that maybe that information was just for you or a certain group of people, and now you've broadcasted it among the collective, and now everyone's thinking, oh my God, this date, this is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and there you go. Again, everybody is under these false flags, and I think it gets very tricky when you look at it that way, but I think we have to look at it that way too.
Yeah, and that actually makes me, you probably were thinking of this one time, because I always forget sometimes with interviews, I'm like, oh, I forgot I mentioned that. But I had one client too, she was asking about whether or not to go on a trip and if it was going to be safe and all these things. And they were showing, oh yeah, a false flag is going to show up, but she'd be fine wherever she was going. But she had to go because she and her partner were supposed to have a magical time there
Mhm.
in case they wanted to bring in a child, because that was an
Uh-huh.
intent. And so, and even though the child didn't show up at that time, they had the most magical moment that was going to allow them to continue and enjoy their current state of relationship and where they're at now. But it was interesting because had that not, they told her, yes, go. Ironically, a false flag did show up. It wasn't there, but it did
Mm.
show up at that time, but it didn't affect their travel.
Okay.
But they were meant to be, it was almost like it was very interesting because they showed a false flag, but then they showed, yes, a clear path on their trip. And so I guess that's an interesting thing that you also mentioned, because I do believe we all have access to our own Akashic records. We all have access. It's just whether, like, I'm always using only love and light frequency because that for me is the highest vibrational messages. But like some other psychics and stuff, I don't think all of them, I could be wrong, but I've had my fair share where they're not protecting the space and the love and
Mhm.
light. They're just grabbing at anything. So
Yes.
they
Hmm.
could be grabbing at high vibrational messages, but they also could be grabbing at low. And so if it's a low one, then they could give you a message of saying, oh gosh, this, family member going to die in 2 weeks, but it's going to be, and like it could be then, oh no, and then it ends up in a depression energy, or so there's so many different frequencies that people can grasp at too, which I always found was, because I always try to figure out why do people why do I feel like a icky feeling sometimes when if I go into a place where they do offer that and it doesn't resonate with me, when it can resonate with someone else. And so that's why I've always been like, well, why am I not wanting to be read by this person? And it's like, oh, because I'm
Yeah.
like to receive only love and light in when I'm being read for, because I know the impact of the lower frequencies and how that could take you down a path of like, whoa, that was not fun, and let's try to go on a higher frequency path.
Yeah, and I think the key here is just discernment.
Hmm.
It's just use your discernment. If you get a reading with somebody that contradicts a reading with somebody else, just take what resonates with you. And I'm not saying like cherry pick, but what resonates in both messages, because there could be elements of truth in both, and you're not meant to take 100% of what both people said. And I've experienced that myself throughout my life, where I've had readings with people because when I was younger, I wanted everybody to, I was so into it because I wanted to do it. And I realized later, man, I could have done this myself the whole time, but I would think I was meant to have those experiences. And one person would say something and it would contradict with the next person and the next person. And I'm like, well, wow, what do I do with all of this? And it ended up just frustrating me and confused me even more. So then there are times where I wouldn't let anybody read me because I'm like, no, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. This is ridiculous. But I think, again, it's just a lesson in our discernment, and are we using our power and we tapping into our knowing, like of what resonates and feels right for us. And not everybody gets the information 100%. Even I work with love and light. you work with love and light, but you're never going to give somebody 100% accuracy. It just isn't impossible. It's not possible because it still has to filter through our perception. And then we have our own limiting beliefs and we have to interpret it. And so there's marginal error on purpose. So that's where things get tricky.
Well, even I think Tyler's response too was, "Oh, that's interesting," because maybe that guide of that person knew that trigger that was going to trigger this person. Because like if someone
Yeah.
says like, "Oh, your dad's going to die in 2 weeks," then it might be a trigger for me to say, "Let me spend the next 2 weeks with like total dedication and be there all day every day." And maybe I needed to hear that in order to be present for the next 2 weeks, even though he might not have passed in that time. So it's really interesting because I think too, like I find the guides to be really fascinating, and sometimes they obviously can see things or know things about us that we don't really are we're not aware, or maybe that I needed to say it like this so that that person would, visit with their grandmother one last time before the grandmother decided to depart. So it's really fascinating. Um, because
Yeah.
there's so much and there's so much we don't know, and it's so humbling, and it's like, oh gosh, I'm just here to be the observer and try to share as much as I can, but it is very humbling because there's so much out there. I think we are limited. We're humans, we don't know how it all works, but just to be in the presence of it and maybe just enjoy, and for me, prayer and gratitude and trying to be as humble as possible just makes it easier.
I think that's what attracts me to people like you, Leah. Are people I resonate the most with the people that are humble. I can tell one humble person knows another humble person. We're not arrogant. We don't try to act like we know more than we do. And my biggest red flag for the spiritual community, and the people that I stay away from the most are the ones that think they know everything. That I have a real problem with people who, with certainty and confidence, like they know the absolute truth, and I'm thinking, how is that possible? Like, and so I think like that discernment needs to come through with a lot of people who are vulnerable right now, just awakening and trying to find their truth. They're following people like, oh, who do I follow? Who do I listen to? Who knows? Who doesn't? And nobody really knows everything. Like you said, we know what we know, but it's always evolving and changing. But the people that like preach as though they are all knowing, I just I can't be on board with that. I'm not on board with those people, and I try to stay away from them because something is wrong there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm shy about like social media and stuff, but I'm like, oh, if I can just get out of my shyness, it could maybe help someone that needs it. And but it is interesting because yeah, I'm always in shock of the people that can't say those things, because I'm like, wait, we all are evolving. It's out
Mhm.
thinking like I mean, who I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I've evolved from that. I've shifted in ways, my thoughts have changed in a way where I find that's, thank God. Like I'm okay with that. Like I'm
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah.
need to be away from that version of myself, or I had to go through that to learn. And
Hmm.
the ego, it's funny, I always, but that's the one thing too, I always would ask too, like with certain celebrities or certain musicians, I'm like, how can they because their ego would be so big, not all, but some, their ego would be so big. And I'm like, that's interesting. Maybe they needed that to get to that place, and then to have worshipers. Like that was the one thing I always never understood was um people that worship celebrities. Like I'm like, they're not like masters in philosophy or whatever. Like they're not
Yeah.
enlightened souls. Like from what I haven't really met I haven't really met one that has been enlightened. Although I did meet a few that their auras were beautiful and they were so amazing. But other than that, I was very few and far between, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's why I didn't never understood that celebrity worshiping thing, where I was like,
I
oh, maybe they need it, because I did meet somebody that was trying to like quote unquote teach energy work, and it was very fascinating because this person thought they were channeling a um Egyptian god. And then I realized, oh, she likes to be worshipped. So that's
Exactly.
how
Yeah.
interesting you chose that specific channeling. But anyways, I just
Mm.
always wonder how people can have so many people worship them. And that's when I realized, oh, there must be channeling another energy to call that in, or their ego,
I'm so
maybe.
glad that you mentioned that too, Leah, because this was the kind of how I wanted to close today, and the last thing I wanted to talk about is it kind of alludes to what you just mentioned. I met a lot of celebrities in when I was a registered vet tech in a very well-known emergency hospital in Los Angeles, and I
Mhm.
met so many celebrities whose unfortunately their pets were in the ICU, and I was caring for them. So I met a lot.
Mhm.
And of course, a lot of them were at their worst. So I took it with a grain of salt, but man, they were some nasty, right, self-righteous people. I just couldn't believe. I was like, man, this is who you are, like in real life. And so I think they do have this word, like they're better than everybody complex. And God, people, I cannot, like, that is one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, I don't think anybody should be worshiped. And I certainly don't want to be worshiped. And you said something about, in the interview was, your role is to empower people. And that's something that I have always said. I don't want anyone to feel like they need to rely on me, that they need me. I said, I have my own children and my own family like that need me. I don't want anyone else to put me on a pedestal. And you said the same thing about like with your clients, like, you can do this. I'll help open the door. I'll help you. But you ultimately have to do the work. And I respect that so much because I feel too many healers out there try to make money, and they manipulate people and take advantage and make them feel like they need them for that next step. Okay, I'll get you this far, but then you're gonna, okay, but don't forget, I'll help you get to the end. I don't like that. I don't think that we should operate in that way. We empower and then we release. Now, if they want to come back from time to time to get pep talks and guidance, okay, that's another thing. And you said that too. So, what are your thoughts on that, Leah?
Oh yeah, no, and that's why too, like I'm eventually gonna get there. I just had I'm a little slower when I'm like a scenic type of driver. But I want to, I've taught people how to open their own records. I've taught people how to open others because it saved my life. Like it made me realize, gosh, I'm just here on a journey and I hope it made me appreciate this so much more.
Mhm.
And as I was able to figure out if I was feeling my energy or someone else's, and then I was able to figure out how to say, okay, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and we'll get that boundary going.
Mhm.
But it took me years and years, and I'm still learning, of course, because I'm forever a student. But the point is, like, I actually want to empower people to say, hey, I'm here if you need me, but let me also teach you how to do it so you'll know. I open my records, I think every day. Like when I learned, I opened them every day for like 6 months just to, because I was like so excited, but I was also like, let me just know fully how to feel what's there. And
Yeah.
channel right, because that's how I would get my messages. And then I'd close my records and then I'd read what I wrote. And then I would practice on people for years before I even started charging because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't questioning what was being shown. I wasn't saying something that I thought Leah was crazy, but for them, it was the most important thing to say. So I literally practiced and practiced and then I finally said, okay, it's time. It took me years to get there because I'm one of those that I just don't want to make a mistake. So, but it was one of the things. It's okay. Just be of service and be there for people and create the sacred space. That's what I realized. I need to. So I'm going to prepare on how to help people and teach them because I did a few in-person groups where it was lovely and I'm so grateful for it. But I also am going to try to do something online too. So people who
Yeah.
do need this, who want to learn, because we all
Mhm.
have. Yes, I've been doing it for a while, so I feel very confident in it. But I want you to learn. I want you to know we're all capable of this. This is
Yeah.
a gift for all of us. So that's why I want people to feel empowered. I want them to know I am grateful to be able to do this, but someone else can do it just as well or just even better or do it for themselves. So that's why too. That's my
Yeah.
goal. over the next few months, I'm planning on how to
Good.
create that.
Yeah, and I think that we signed up and to guide people during a in-between period too. Like people need to be reminded and coached that they do have the ability to do these things. And it took me a long time to charge too. I was working full time at the zoo and I was doing these readings and and people would be like, "Oh, what do I owe you?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing."
Yeah.
Like, because I was like, how can I? It was so uncomfortable and awkward for me in the beginning. I would not. And my mom and my husband, again, those are the two people that said, Sherri, like you have to charge people for this. This is your time. Your time is valuable. Do you want to open a wellness center? Do you want to do this full time? Do you want to get out of the zoo? Because I didn't want to be there anymore. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, how are you going to make a living if you don't charge anybody? And I was like, yeah, but, and they're like, no, but. And like it was a hard lesson for me. And I feel like every single empath that I've met or known or worked with, they've all struggled with the same thing. The ones that are genuine, the ones that are not trying to take one over somebody else. And it's a real struggle for us. And even to this day, sometimes I'll tell people, oh, don't worry about it. I'll just, I'm like, no, you're a friend. I can't charge you, because like we shouldn't have to charge for these things. We should live in a reality where we are able to help people without receiving monetary benefit. The energetic exchange is more than enough. Like, thank you, gratitude, and you help me in a way that I'll help you with this, and maybe you help me down the line with something you have expertise. It's all about us working together and sharing our gifts as opposed to like everyone trying to hoard it for
Yeah.
themselves, like, oh, I'm a healer, and then two energy healers can't be friends because, oh, you're going to take clients from me. And I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Like, do you know how many billions of people are in the world? Like, are you kidding
You
me?
know,
And I've
it's a
met people like that didn't want to work with me because oh, well, what if you steal my clients? And I'm like, wow, I don't want to even know you anymore.
oh no, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And that's something too. That was what I learned at the QHHT is listen, this is all a blessing. We're all opening up to sacred space. So like I can open up the Akashic and it will come through me, or I can open up and do a hypnotherapy or QHHT and I'll ask your questions and you'll answer it, your higher self. So it's all sacred. But what I also learned too is like some people were like, well, I only want to do a session with this person or this person. And I get that. But then other people will be like, well, why are they getting so much publicity and whatever? And I'm just like, the universe is abundant. Just call in your people. Like I am drawn to certain people because like I need that to heal. I need someone that's soft and gentle and loving and not abrasive because that will trigger me into my old wounds or whatever. Like, so I know like not everyone's going to be drawn to me and that's okay. It's fine. It's perfect. It's divine. Find the person that you are going to heal with.
Yeah.
Find that person that connects and is your frequency because I do feel we all have our different frequencies and
Yeah.
I don't want to ever make someone feel pressure to be work with me and be like, no, you have to want to work with me so
Mhm.
you can heal.
Well, and so if people want to work, we'll wrap it up a little bit. I've so enjoyed this conversation, Leah, and thank you for your valuable time and allowing this conversation to take place. We've been trying to get together for months. So I think there's been some 3D interference keeping us from each other. That was also clear today, but also divine intervention to bring us together because this conversation is valuable. And so I'm so honored to have you on this channel today. How can people find you if they want to have a reading with you? And I'll put your information in the description as well.
Oh, thank you. And thank you too for creating such sacred space for people to land on and just your teachings and your school. It makes such a difference. That's shown up in people's records of like years ago, they were told they need to help young kids and starseed children and honor the energy that's showing up here now and allowing people to grow. So by you doing the work and by you providing that space and helping so many, it just makes the ripple effect and I'll see that in the records. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you
Oh,
too because
that's
it
lovely.
it makes a difference. So I have a website. It's called it's www.leahray light. So that's LEAHRA. Oh wait, is that yeah, LEA. Sorry. My brain my brain went like into
That's okay.
My brain went to my middle name means light, so that's why I have Leah Ray Light because my middle name. So anyway,
Oh,
it's LeahRayLight.com. And there I try to explain stuff, but basically people can just buy a time slot. And with the time slot, we can go over what the person needs. So I could do energy work during a
okay.
session, I can do Akashic readings and or both, but I also do hypnotherapy and QHHTs and past life regression. So but yeah, basically I can always discuss too what people want to work on before we open to the records. And then usually their guides will just kind of take over. I'm just opening
Yeah.
up.
I think I need to have a session with you. I have to try it out.
I would love to gift one, please, because I'm always grateful and to just even you sharing, allowing me to be on your channel. So I would love to gift you one, please. So
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing. I think that would be lovely. So thank you for the offer. I'll put your website description below so people can find you easily. Is there anything else you want to close with today before we finish up?
well, I just want to have people to have hope. I want to give people hope that this is a wild and fascinating time we're living. And it's also a gift when we are able to activate our higher selves or activate the energy to empower ourselves. And yes, it felt like there could be doom and gloom a lot of times, over the past few years, but I feel it's all fascinating if we can just kind of be the observer and enjoy it and see it from like that bird's eye view of like, oh, I can be in this. I don't have to be of it. There's a whole different frequency when you can
Yeah.
step up from a distance and just say, let's just pray on this and send love and see where it's going to take us. Because I really feel like there's so many growing pains through this journey, but to help people empower themselves or just to almost find themselves with like your beautiful, website and your beautiful landing place or just the different
Hmm.
even events, to meet up and say hi and say, hey, we're in this together. It does make a difference.
Absolutely, Leah. Well, I love your presence. I love your energy. It was lovely to have this talk with you today. I hope everybody watching has found this fascinating as much as I have. And I hope that this video has found all of you well. And until next time, we'll see everybody soon. So bye, everybody.